Previously, Sloane, the gruff cynic who doesn't do dating, gets dragged to dinner and is obliterated by Ava's sunbright smile. Sparks turn seismic, charged glances, a jolt under the table. Sloane catching Ava from a rain-slick fall. Then a confession by text. I'm starting to. They meet in the park. Awkward melts to easy, fingers lace. And on their bench a trembling cheek-to-cheek ends with Ava cupping Sloane's face. The Ice Queen is thawing and she's falling. Link is in the description for part 1. Her gaze was unwavering, holding Sloane's as if she were the most precious, fragile thing in the world. Then slowly, deliberately, Ava leaned in again. She brushed her cheek against Sloane's once more. A slow, deliberate caress, a reciprocation, an affirmation. It was a silent language more eloquent than any words could ever be. I feel it, too. I want this, too. The second contact was even more potent than the first. It wasn't a shock. It was a homecoming. A silent pact was sealed there on the bench in the fading light with the touch of their cheeks. When they finally pulled apart, their faces were flushed, their breathing still unsteady. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The air between them was thick with a new understanding, a new addiction. Sloane reached out, her fingers finding Ava's and intertwining with them, holding on as if she'd never let go. The dam hadn't broken yet, but the first most vital cracks had appeared, and through them poured a flood of terrifying, exhilarating possibility. They sat in silence for a long time after, hands clasped, shoulders touching, both knowing that nothing would ever be the same again. They were both utterly completely addicted. The cheek brushing on the bench wasn't an endpoint. It was a floodgate swinging open. What followed was a silent mutual agreement to rewrite the rules of engagement. Touch, once a shocking, seismic event, became their primary language. A vocabulary more nuanced and honest than words could ever be. It began the very next day. They met at their usual spot, and the air was different. The nervous anticipation was still there, but it was now layered with a thrilling certainty. Ava didn't hesitate. She walked straight up to Sloane, a bright, knowing smile on her face, and wrapped her arms around her in a full warm hug. Sloane, who had once stiffened at a pat on the back, melted into it. Her arms came around Ava, her hands playing across the small of her back, pulling her close. It wasn't a polite greeting. It was a reunion. They stood like that for a long moment on the sidewalk, breathing each other in, the world moving around them unnoticed. Hand-holding became as natural as breathing. Sloane's cool, slender fingers would seek out Ava's warm, lively ones, threading through them with a practiced ease that made Ava's heart sing. They walked through the city streets like that, swinging their clasped hands between them. Sloane, who had always walked with purpose, a solitary figure cutting through crowds, now moved with a new rhythm, attuned to the woman beside her. She'd use her grip to gently steer Ava away from a puddle or pull her closer on a crowded sidewalk, the possessive tug sending a thrill through them both. But the cheek brushing that became their secret sacrament, it was their unique, intimate greeting, reserved for moments of hello and goodbye. Or for no reason at all. Ava would lean in, nuzzling her nose against Sloane's cheek before pressing her face there, inhaling the clean, faintly spicy scent of her perfume. Sloane would turn into the touch, her eyes closing, her own nose brushing against Ava's temple, memorizing the feel of her skin. It was a kiss without lips, an embrace without arms, a silent communication of pure, overwhelming affection that left them both breathless and centered. They were, in a word, ridiculous, and they loved it. They developed a private lexicon of laughter and teasing. Sloane's dry, deadpan, which found its perfect counterpoint in Ava's effervescent joy. You're like a personal rain cloud, Ava would tease, poking Sloane's side as they waited in line for coffee. I can practically see the little storm cloud over your head. When the barista mispronounces your name, Sloane would look down at her, a glint in her dark eyes. And you're a walking, talking sunbeam. It's medically concerning. Do you ever stop radiating? Nope. Ava would chirp, popping the pea. It's a terminal condition. You're stuck with me, grumpy knight. A fate worse than death, Sloane would retort. But her hand would tighten around Ava's and the corner of her mouth would twitch in a way that was for her a beaming smile. Their friends, of course, noticed. How could they not? It was at a casual group brunch. Sloane and Ava arrived together, a fact that itself raised eyebrows. They slid into the booth, their shoulders and thighs pressed together from hip to knee. When the food arrived, Ava, without even looking, stole a piece of bacon from Sloane's plate. The table held its breath, waiting for Sloane's trademark grumble about food thieves. Sloane just looked at the empty spot on her plate, then at Ava, who was munching on the bacon with an innocent expression. You owe me, Sloane said, her voice low. I'll pay you back in sunshine and cuddles. Ava replied without missing a beat. A beat of silence. Then Sloane the stoic, the unflappable, actually blushed. A faint pink tinge colored her cheeks, and she ducked her head to hide a smile. The table erupted. Okay, what is happening? Tara demanded, pointing a fork between them. You're touching. You're sharing food. Sloane is blushing. Who are you, and what have you done with our friend? Sloane immediately schooled her features into a scowl. Nothing is happening. She's a menace who steals bacon. It's a simple predator-prey relationship. Ava just laughed, leaning her head against Sloane's shoulder. Yeah, you're real scary, she murmured, nuzzling into her arm. The group exchanged looks of utter bewilderment and dawning comprehension. Something was definitely happening, but when pressed, both women clammed up. Later, when asked directly by a curious friend, Ava would just smile a secret, glowing smile. Sloane's my best friend. We just get each other. Sloane, when cornered by Tara, would shrug, a genuine, if awkward, gesture. She's persistent, and she has a key to my apartment now to water my plants. It's convenient. They were terrible liars. Their denials were transparent, their excuses flimsy, but neither was ready to shatter the fragile, beautiful bubble they were living in. To put a label on it felt like tempting fate. It was too new, too precious, too terrifyingly intense. Admitting it out loud might break the spell, might send Sloane retreating back behind her walls. So they existed in a glorious, breathless limbo. Not just friends, not yet openly lovers, but something in between that was for now everything. The change in their routine was as subtle as a shift in barometric pressure before a storm. It started with a text from Ava that was uncharacteristically short, lacking its usual parade of emojis and exuberant punctuation. Ava 10:17 a.m. Hey, think I'm coming down with something? Heads pounding. Might have to rain check tonight. Pensive face. Sloane stared at the message, a cold knot of concern tightening in her stomach. It was more than disappointment at a missed meeting. It was a primal protective alarm bell. Ava was never sick. Ava was vitality incarnate. The idea of her diminished, of that bright light being dimmed, felt fundamentally wrong. Sloane, 10:19 a.m. What are your symptoms? The reply took a long time. Ava, 10:31 a.m. Just a cold. Throat scratchy. Super tired. Don't worry about it. Sleep it off. Talk tomorrow. X. Sloane did not believe her for a second. The breezy dismissal was a tell. She spent the next hour trying to focus on work, but her focus was shot. Visions of Ava alone, miserable, and dehydrated in her apartment flickered behind her eyes. By noon, the knot of concern had solidified into a firm, unshakable resolve. She was going over there. She left work early, a first in recent memory, and went on a mission. The pharmacy was a brightly lit nightmare, but she navigated the aisles with a soldier's precision. Decongestants, the strongest cough syrup, throat lines in every flavor, a digital thermometer, and a box of tissues so soft it was labeled plush. Next was the grocery store, where she bought lemons, ginger, and a whole chicken. She moved through her own kitchen with a focused intensity she usually reserved for complex design projects, chopping vegetables, simmering the broth, and seasoning the soup not just with salt and pepper, but with a fierce, unspoken need to fix this. She arrived at Ava's apartment building, a paper bag of medicine in one hand and a still warm thermos of homemade chicken soup in the other. She buzzed, her heart hammering with a strange anxiety. What if Ava was out cold? What if she was worse than she'd admitted? The lock snicked open. Sloane took the stairs two at a time. She found Ava on the couch, swallowed by a mountain of blankets. She was pale. Her usually bright skin was damp and clammy. Blonde hair clung to her forehead with sweat, and her eyes, when they fluttered open, were glassy with fever. The sight hit like a fist to Sloane's chest. "Sloane," Ava's voice was a hoarse rasp. "What are you doing here?" "You lied," Sloane said, her tone rough to hide her worry. She set the bags on the coffee table with a soft thud. "You said it was just a cold. This is the flu." Ava tried to smile, but it wobbled. "You didn't have to come." "I'm gross." "You're sick," Sloane corrected, leaving no room for debate. Now she was in her element, a problem to solve. She moved with quiet, formidable efficiency that left Ava weak with a different kind of dizziness. She made Ava take medicine with a glass of water. She fluffed the pillows and tucked the blankets close with surprising tenderness. She warmed a bowl of soup, and when Ava's hands trembled too hard to hold the spoon, Sloane did the unthinkable. She sat on the edge of the couch, lifted a spoon to Ava's lips, and fed her. The intimacy of it was staggering. Too weak to protest, Ava could only watch, her eyes wide and soft with feeling. Each spoonful was more than soup. It was care, devotion, a language Sloane spoke when words failed. "You made this," Ava whispered after a few bites. Sloane shrugged, staring hard at the bowl. "It's just soup." It was everything. As evening wore on and the fever eased, leaving Ava exhausted and shivery, she made a small, desperate sound. "Stay," she whispered, fingers weakly catching Sloane's sleeve. "The couch pulls out." Or just, "Stay." Every instinct in Sloane's body screamed retreat. Vulnerability was foreign soil, and intimacy of this scale, sharing a room all night, was its terrifying capital. But looking down at Ava's pleading, fever-bright eyes, her resolve gave way. "Okay," she said, the word feeling like a tectonic shift in her chest. She helped Ava to the bedroom. Once Ava was settled, Sloane went to the bathroom to change into the spare t-shirt and sweatpants Ava had lent her. They smelled like her vanilla and sunshine even through the scent of illness. Sloane's hands shook as she pulled them on. She returned to the bedroom to find Ava watching from the pillows, a small smile on her face. "My grumpy night in, well, my pink sweatpants." Sloane almost smiled. She killed the light and slid into bed, hugging the edge, her body a rigid line of tension in the dark. For a long moment, they lay quiet, the only sound their breathing. Then Ava made a small, unhappy noise and shifted. A warm hand found Sloane's arm in the dark and tugged. "You're a mile away." "I'm cold." With a sigh that was more surrender than irritation, Sloane relented. She rolled over and opened her arms. Ava immediately tucked into them, burrowing close, fitting her head beneath Sloane's chin with a contented sigh from her very bones. Sloane's body, wound as tight as a spring, slowly, incrementally began to ease. She was holding her. Ava's fever-warm body curled into hers, her breath soft against Sloane's neck, one leg thrown over Sloane's. The fear didn't vanish, but it was slowly eclipsed by a feeling of such profound rightness it brought a sting of tears to Sloane's eyes. This was what she had been guarding herself against all these years. This terrifying, beautiful feeling of being someone's shelter. She buried her nose in Ava's hair and held on as the woman in her arms fell into a deep, peaceful sleep. Sloane didn't sleep much. She just held her, listening to her breathe, feeling the fever finally break for good, her heart cracking open in the quiet dark. Morning light filtered through the blinds, painting stripes across the bed. Sloane stirred, pulled from a deep, surprisingly restful sleep by a familiar, wonderful scent. Coffee and something else. Bacon. She opened her eyes. The other side of the bed was empty. Panic, swift and irrational, gripped her for a second. Had she dreamed it before she heard the soft clatter of a pan from the kitchen? She found Ava there, moving slowly but with purpose. Her color returned. She was wearing Sloane's black knit beanie, pulled down over her bed head and her own robe. She was humming, scrambling eggs. The scene was so domestic, so beautifully normal. Ava turned and saw her leaning against the door frame. A radiant, if slightly tired, smile broke across her face. "Morning. You're a way better nurse than I am a patient. Coffee's ready." She poured 2 mugs and brought one over to Sloane. Their fingers brushed during the handoff, and the familiar electric current zipped between them, stronger than ever in the soft morning light. They stood there in the middle of the kitchen, just looking at each other. The air was thick with everything that had passed between them. The illness, the care, the long night of holding and being held. Ava's smile softened. She looked at Sloane, really looked at the sleep-softened features, the dark hair must, the vulnerability she was so clearly trying to hide behind the steam of her coffee mug. She saw the woman who had made her soup, who had fed her, who had held her all night without asking for a thing in return. The dam, already strained to its limit, finally broke. Ava set her mug down on the counter. She stepped forward into Sloane's space and took Sloane's mug from her hands, setting it down, too. Sloane watched her, her dark eyes wide and questioning, her breath catching. Without a word, Ava rose up on her toes, cuped Sloane's face in her hands, and pulled her down into a searing, passionate kiss. It wasn't a question. It was an answer. It was a thank you. It was a confession. It was everything. The kiss tasted of coffee and hope and a long patient wait finally over. Sloane froze for a single heart-topping second, and then she melted. Her hands came up to grip Ava's waist, pulling her flush against her, her lips moving against Ava's with a desperate, hungry intensity that she had kept locked away for a lifetime. The world narrowed to the feel of Ava's lips, the sound of their ragged breaths, the overwhelming, terrifying, glorious rightness of it. The grumpy stoic had been breached, not by force, but by care, by patience, and by the unwavering light of a sunshine menace who had refused to give up on her. And as she kissed Ava back, Sloane knew, with a certainty that shook her to her core, that she never wanted to be fixed again. The kiss in the kitchen was not an end, but a detonation. It shattered the last fragile pane of glass between the world they had carefully built and the raw, unfiltered truth of what they wanted. What began as a soft, grateful press of lips quickly escalated into something fevered and desperate. Ava's hand slid from Sloane's face into her hair, tangling in the dark strands, pulling her closer as if she could somehow merge them into one being. Sloane's grip on Ava's waist tightened, her fingers pressing into the soft terracloth of the robe, feeling the firm shape of her beneath. It was Sloane who broke the kiss first, her forehead resting against Ava's, her breath coming in ragged, shuddering gasps. Her eyes were wide, dark pools of pure, unvarnished terror and want. This was the precipice. Behind her was a lifetime of safe, solitary control. Before her was a free fall into something she had spent her entire adult life running from. Ava. Her voice was a raw scrape, a plea, and a warning all at once. Ava understood. She saw the storm of fear in Sloane's eyes. She gently took Sloane's hand, her thumb stroking over her knuckles, a silent, steady anchor in the tumult. "Come on," she whispered, her voice husky with emotion. She led her, not back to the disheveled bed of sickness, but to the couch where Sloane had cared for her. The morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air like gold dust. They sank onto the soft cushions facing each other, knees touching. The frantic energy settled into a thick, trembling anticipation. This time, Sloane initiated the kiss. It was slower, more deliberate, a deep, searching exploration. It was as if she was trying to memorize the feel of Ava's mouth, the taste of her, the soft little sound she made when Sloane's tongue gently traced her lower lip. Hands began to wander tentatively at first. Ava's fingers slipped beneath the hem of the t-shirt Sloane wore, her touch cool against the hot, smooth skin of her back. Sloane flinched at the contact, a reflexive jolt before melting into it with a groan that was torn from the depths of her soul. Her own hands, clumsy with need, fumbled with the tie of Ava's robe, finally loosening it to slide inside, palms skimming up the incredible softness of her sides. The robe slipped from Ava's shoulders. The t-shirt was pulled over Sloane's head and discarded. They broke apart for a moment just to look. The sunlight played over their skin. Ava's golden and familiar. Sloane's pale and newly revealed, a landscape Ava had only ever imagined. For Sloane, it was terrifying. She felt exposed. Every inch of her skin a live wire. She watched Ava's eyes as they traveled over her, expecting to see what judgment, disappointment. Instead, she saw only awe, reverence. Ava's gaze was like a physical caress, warming her wherever it landed. "You're so beautiful," Ava breathed, her voice full of wonder. The words, so simple, so sincere, were the final key. They unlocked a door deep inside Sloane, and what poured out was a need so profound it eclipsed the fear. She surged forward, capturing Ava's mouth again, her hands cupping her face, her neck, her shoulders, as if she couldn't touch enough of her at once. They slid down onto the couch, a tangle of limbs and soft, desperate sounds. Clothes were shed not with frantic urgency, but with a slow, worshipful intensity. Every new inch of skin revealed was a discovery, a miracle to be catalogued with lips and fingertips and tongue. Sloane was a novice, but she was a quick study, her every movement guided by an instinct she never knew she possessed. She learned the map of Ava's body with a focused intensity, the sensitive spot behind her ear that made her gasp, the way her back arched off the couch when Sloane's mouth closed over her breast, the soft, helpless cry that escaped her lips when Sloane's hand finally slid between her legs. For Ava, it was overwhelming, not just the physical pleasure, which was dizzying in its intensity, but the profound privilege of being the first to see Sloane like this, wild and undone, the first to hear her breath catch on a moan, the first to feel the tremors that racked her strong body as Ava reciprocated her own touch, exploring, claiming, worshiping. There were no more walls, no more defenses. Sloane was laid bare, not just physically, but emotionally. Tears she didn't even know she was crying slipped from the corners of her eyes, and Ava kissed them away, whispering words of love and reassurance against her skin. They moved to the bed, the afternoon sun warming their naked bodies. They made love not once but again and again, as if making up for lifetime of lost time. It was wild and tender, desperate and laughing. It was Sloane, her voice unbroken, crying out Ava's name as she fell apart under her touch. It was Ava sobbing with joy as she watched the woman she loved finally let go completely. Later, as the sun began to set, painting the room in shades of orange and purple, they lay tangled together in the wreckage of sheets. Spent and sated, Sloane's head was on Ava's chest, listening to the steady, strong beat of her heart. Ava's fingers were slowly lazily combing through Sloane's dark hair. The silence was peaceful, sacred. Sloane felt new. The person she had been that morning, the one who was afraid of this, who hid from it, felt like a distant memory. She felt raw, yes, terrifyingly vulnerable, but she also felt more real, more alive than she ever had in her entire life. She tilted her head up to look at Ava. Her face was soft, her smile languid and full of a love so fierce it made Sloane's breath catch. "Okay," Ava whispered, her thumb stroking Sloane's cheek. Sloane could only nod, her throat too tight for words. She wasn't just okay. She was reborn. She had taken the leap, and instead of crashing, she had found herself held, cherished, and utterly completely undone in the most beautiful way possible. The grumpy stoic was gone, and in her place was a woman passionately, wildly in love, finally home in the arms of her sunshine menace. The world did not just continue after that afternoon. It was remade, painted in brighter, more vibrant colors. The transition from secret bubbling closed courtship to open passionate coupledom was not a step, but a glorious seamless slide. They became a single indivisible unit, their lives intertwining with the natural inevitable force of two rivers merging. The rituals of their day were no longer just evening meetings. They were the entire symphony of a shared life. Sloane's previously minimalist apartment began to show signs of a cheerful invasion. A vibrant, slightly lopsided ceramic mug Ava had made in a pottery class appeared next to Sloane's stark white ones in the cupboard. A second toothbrush, a garish electric pink, stood in the holder beside Sloane's sensible black one. A cozy, impossibly soft throw blanket in a shade of sunflower yellow was permanently draped over the back of Sloane's austere gray sofa. These weren't just objects. They were flags of occupation, declarations of love, and Sloane adored every single one of them. The end of the workday was no longer a countdown to escape, but a countdown to reunion. They would often find themselves waiting for the other outside their respective offices. The sight of Sloane leaning against her motorcycle, or a street lamp, a single sunflower, or a tiny perfect espresso held in her hand, never failed to make Ava's heart soar. She would run the last few steps, often launching herself into Sloane's arms for a kiss that would leave them both breathless, and drawing amused looks from passers-by. Other times, it was Ava who waited, bouncing on the balls of her feet outside Sloane's sleek design firm. She'd be clutching to steaming cups of tea, and her face would light up with a radiance that Sloane was convinced could power the city grid. When she finally emerged, Sloane's colleagues, who had known her as a brisk, unapproachable ghost, would stare in open-mouthed astonishment as the formidable Sloane Archer would break into a genuine, soft-eyed smile, stride over, and drop a kiss on the waiting woman's forehead before taking her tea. Dinners were no longer solitary affairs of efficiency. They were elaborate or simple, but they were always together. They'd crowd into Sloane's small kitchen, Ava chopping vegetables with enthusiastic, if not always precise, abandon, while Sloane managed the stove with a calm, controlled grace. They'd feed each other bites, their fingers brushing, their laughter echoing off the tiles. Or they'd order takeout and eat straight from the containers, sitting on the floor round the coffee table, their legs tangled together, talking over each other about their days. But the nights were theirs. The world outside ceased to exist. They would fall into bed, sometimes with a slow, tender reverence that left them whispering secrets into each other's skin in the dark, and other times with a frantic, consuming hunger, as if they couldn't get close enough fast enough. Sloane, who had never shared her bed, who had valued her space above all else, now found she couldn't sleep without the weight of Ava's leg thrown over hers, the soft puff of her breath against her neck, the feeling of being wrapped around her like a second skin. Their passion was a living thing, obsessive and all-consuming, and they fed it gladly. Night after night, their friends watched the transformation with a mixture of joy and utter disbelief. It was like watching a statue come to life. They saw it at a group dinner when Ava, without thinking, reached over and wiped a tiny spot of sauce from the corner of Sloane's mouth with her thumb. The table froze, waiting for Sloane to recoil or make a sharp comment. Instead, Sloane caught Ava's wrist, turned her hand, and pressed a kiss to her palm. The gesture was so tender, so instinctively affectionate that Tara actually dropped her fork. They heard it in Sloane's voice when she called Ava. Her tone, once all business and gruff monosyllables, would soften, becoming a low, intimate rumble that was meant for Ava's ears only. They noticed the shifts in the little things. Sloane's wardrobe now sometimes flashed a hint of color, a deep blue scarf from Ava, a burgundy beanie. She was still Sloane, still dry and sardonic, but the edges had been gentled, replaced by a quiet, settled ease. She smiled more. She laughed shrill, full-bodied laughs that changed her whole face. Ava, in turn, seemed to draw a sturdier strength from Sloane's constancy. Her sunshine wasn't dimmer, It was anchored, more resilient. She had someone to lean on, and in leaning, discovered she could shine brighter. Their relationship was a closed loop of devotion, a private cosmos of shared jokes, soft touches, and scorching glances. To outsiders, it might have read as a touch obsessive. They were each other's first thought at dawn and last thought at night. They texted all day, silly little notes serving no purpose except to say, "I'm here. I'm thinking of you." Neither cared how it looked. They had found the missing piece they hadn't realized they were seeking. Sloane, who had sworn she'd never love anyone, hadn't merely fallen. She dove head first and discovered, to her enduring astonishment, that she could not only stay afloat but flourish at depth. She was happier, lighter, more open than any friend had ever seen her. And at the center was Ava, the bubbly believer who had looked at a fortress and seen a home, who took the hand of a gruff stoic and found herself holding a love so fierce, so ardent, so unwavering it made her believe in forever every single day. They were lovers in the world, and they were building a small world for two. The joy they grew was real, a tangible warmth filling Sloane's once bare apartment. Yet for Sloane, happiness was unfamiliar terrain. She felt like a visitor there, always expecting her passport to be revoked. The deeper she fell, the more frightening the height beneath her seemed. Her love for Ava was the truest fact of her life, and it carried a terrifying corollary: the risk of loss. It didn't surface as blow-ups or jealous scenes. Sloane's fears were quieter, more insidious ghosts pacing the silent spaces. She'd watch Ava laugh at something on her phone, face lit by the screen, and a cold dread would clutch her heart. This is too good. You don't get to keep this. She'd wake at midnight from a shapeless dream, pulse racing, and her first instinct was to tighten her arms around Ava, to prove she was still there, solid and warm and hers. Moments of retreat crept in. Ava would float a plan weeks ahead of friend's wedding, a weekend away, and Sloane would stiffen, almost imperceptibly. The unasked question hovered: will we still be us then? Sometimes she'd go quiet and fold inward like a tortoise, slipping back into a shell she thought she'd shed. Ava, with her easy emotional attunement, saw it all. She noticed the shadow that crossed Sloane's eyes in the middle of a perfect second, felt the faint tension in her frame when forever was mentioned. She didn't push. She didn't ask for explanations. Instead, she began a campaign of reassurance so gentle, so steady that the only name for it was a siege of love. Her weapons were affection and unwavering certainty. She'd leave little notes for Sloane to find, a post-it on the bathroom mirror that read, "Good morning, grumpy night. Your sunshine menace loves you," tucked into Sloane's laptop bag. "Hope your meeting goes well. Thinking of you." They were silly, simple things, but Sloane found herself collecting them, smoothing out the corners, pressing them between the pages of her favorite book. Her touch became a constant gentle anchor, a hand on the small of Sloane's back as she passed her in the kitchen, a kiss dropped on her shoulder while she was washing dishes, fingers intertwining with hers during a movie, a silent "I'm here." It was a physical language that said, "You are not alone in this. I am not going anywhere." And she teased her gently, lovingly. One Saturday morning, Sloane had been particularly reluctant to let Ava out of bed. Her arms locked around her in a visa-like grip, her face buried in Ava's neck. "Sloane," Ava had giggled, squirming. "I have to pee. It's a biological imperative." "No," came the muffled, grumpy reply. "Stay. My grumpy night is getting awfully clingy," Ava sang, stroking Sloane's hair. Sloane's head shot up, a flicker of panic in her eyes. "I'm not clingy." The word was an accusation in her world. Ava's smile was soft. She cupped Sloane's face. "It's okay. I like it. It's my favorite form of imprisonment." She kissed the tip of Sloane's nose. "Now release me before there's a tragic accident." Sloane had rolled her eyes, but she let go, and the panic had receded, replaced by a secret, glowing pleasure. Ava had taken her fear, the fear of being too much, of needing too deeply, and had reframed it as something wanted, even cherished. The bond between them didn't just grow, it deepened, strengthening its roots in the fertile soil of that hard-won trust. Sloane began to relax into the safety net Ava had woven. The shadows behind her eyes appeared less frequently. She started talking about the future. Their future not as a terrifying cliff edge, but as a landscape they would explore together. Then came the night of the confession. They were in bed, the room dark except for the silver moonlight filtering through the blinds. Ava was half asleep, curled against Sloane's side, her head on her chest, listening to the steady thump of her heart. Sloane was awake, running her fingers through Ava's hair, her mind unusually quiet, her heart full to bursting. The words were there, lodged in her throat. 3 words she had never spoken to another soul. They had been circling her for weeks, a constant hum beneath everything else. The fear was still there, a faint echo, but it was drowned out by a louder, more powerful truth. She took a shaky breath. Ava stirred slightly, nuzzling closer. Ava. Sloane's voice was a whisper, so quiet it was almost inaudible. Ava murmured, not fully awake. Sloane's heart was hammering so hard she was sure it would wake the neighbors. Her palms were damp. This was it, the final surrender, the last wall. The word caught. She swallowed, trying to moisten her dry throat. I love you. The silence that followed was the longest 3 seconds of Sloane's life. She felt Ava's body go completely still against hers. Had she misread everything? Had she finally gone too far and shattered the beautiful thing they had? Then Ava slowly pushed herself up. In the moonlight, Sloane could see her face, her eyes wide and shimmering with unshed tears. She wasn't smiling. She was looking at Sloane with an expression of such pure, unguarded wonder that it stole the air from Sloane's lungs. Say it again, Ava whispered, her voice trembling. Sloane's own fears vanished, burned away by the raw hope on Ava's face. She reached up, her thumb brushing away a tear that had escaped down Ava's cheek. Her voice was still soft, but it was firm now, certain. No tremor, just truth. I love you, Ava. A sob escaped Ava's lips, a sound of pure, unadulterated joy. She didn't just beam, she practically vibrated with happiness, her entire face transforming into a radiance that outshone the moon. She launched herself at Sloane, wrapping her arms around her neck and holding on as if she would never let go. I love you, too, she whispered against Sloane's skin, her voice thick with emotion. So much. Oh, Sloane, I love you so much. They held each other in the moonlight, laughing and crying, the words hanging in the air between them, no longer a fear, but a foundation. Sloane felt the last of her walls, the final dusty remnants of her old fortress, crumble to nothing. She wasn't afraid of the fall anymore. She had fallen and she had been caught. She was loved, and in Ava's arms, whispering those 3 words over and over again like a prayer. Sloane finally understood that vulnerability wasn't a weakness. It was the bravest, strongest thing she had ever done. Epilogue. A forever kind of mourning. The first thing Sloane was aware of was the warmth. Not the warmth of the sun streaming through the gaps in the blinds, painting gold stripes across their tangled legs, but the profound living warmth of the woman in her arms. Ava was nestled against her, skin to skin, her back pressed to Sloane's front, their bodies fitting together with the perfect, easy familiarity of 2 pieces of the same whole. Sloane's arm was draped over Ava's waist. Her hands played possessively over the gentle curve of her stomach, feeling the soft rise and fall of her breathing. Ava's scent, vanilla, sleep, and something uniquely, essentially her, filled Sloane's senses. A perfume more soothing than any she'd ever known. This was her reality now. This peace, this belonging, waking up wrapped around her sunshine was a miracle Sloane knew. She would never ever take for granted. She lay there for long, contented minutes, just breathing her in, watching the sunlight dance over Ava's freckled shoulder. A love so fierce it was almost painful swelled in her chest, tightening her throat. This was the woman who had dismantled her walls, brick by stubborn brick, not with force, but with relentless glowing love. The urge to worship her, to show her the depth of that devotion in a language older than words, was overwhelming. With infinite tenderness, so as not to wake her, Sloane began to press a trail of soft, reverent kisses. She kissed the crown of Ava's head, her temple, the delicate shell of her ear. She nuzzled the sensitive spot just behind it, eliciting a soft, sleepy sigh. She continued down, her lips ghosting over the line of Ava's jaw, the column of her throat, her shoulder blade. Each kiss was a silent prayer of gratitude. Slowly, languidly, she began to shift down the bed. The sheets whispered against her skin as she moved, her gaze never leaving the landscape of Ava's body. She kissed the notches of her spine, the small of her back, the swell of her hip. She was mapping her territory, a kingdom she ruled with absolute love and devotion. Ava stirred, murmuring something incoherent in her sleep, a soft smile touching her lips as she subconsciously pressed back into Sloane's touch. Sloane finally came to rest between her legs. She hooked her arms under Ava's thighs, gently urging them apart just enough. She paused for a moment, just looking, drinking in the sight of her, open and trusting even in sleep. The intimacy of it was a sacred thing. She leaned in and pressed a single soft open-mouthed kiss to her very center. Ava's breath hitched in her sleep. A soft questioning moan escaped her lips. Sloane did it again, slower this time, her tongue tracing a languid teasing path. She was unhurried, savoring her, the taste of her, the feel of her beginning to soften and swell under her attention. Then, with a possessiveness that still surprised her, Sloane gently nipped the sensitive flesh. The effect was electric. Ava jolted awake with a sharp gasping cry, her body arching off the mattress. Sloane! Her name was torn from Ava's lips, a strangled moan of shock and instantaneous white-hot pleasure. Sloane didn't stop. If anything, the sound of her name, uttered in that breathless, wanton way, fueled her. She held Ava's hips firmly, anchoring her, and dove in with a focused intensity that stole the air from both their lungs. Her tongue worked a devilish magic, lathing, sucking, circling the aching center of Ava's pleasure with an intimate knowledge that made Ava see stars. "Oh God, Sloane, please," Ava babbled, her hands fisting in the sheets, then tangling in Sloane's dark hair, not pushing her away, but holding on for dear life. Her world had narrowed to the point where Sloane's mouth met her body to the building inferno, spreading from her core, burning away all coherent thought. Sloane was relentless. Her own pleasure derived solely from Ava's unraveling. She could feel the tension coiling tighter and tighter within her, could hear the pitch of her moans rising towards a breaking point. She slid to fingers inside her, curling them, and Ava's scream was half a sob. The climax crashed over Ava like a wave, violent and breathtaking. Her body seized, trembling uncontrollably as she cried out, a roar. Unfiltered sound of ecstasy that seemed to go on forever. Tears of overwhelming sensation leaked from the corners of her eyes as she shattered completely in Sloane's unwavering embrace. Sloane gentled her ministrations, guiding her through the storm until the last tremors subsided, leaving Ava boneless and gasping on the sheets. Before Ava could even catch her breath, Sloane was moving back up her body, covering her, her own eyes dark with desire and love. She kissed the tears from Ava's cheeks, then captured her mouth in a deep, searing kiss, letting her taste herself on Sloane's lips. "I love you," Sloane breathed against her mouth, her voice husky with want. Ava, still trembling, wrapped her arms and legs around Sloane, pulling her down. "I love you more," she gasped, already feeling the embers of her desire stirring back to life under Sloane's weight. "So much more." They made love again, this time face to face, eye to eye. It was slower, deeper, a consuming fusion of bodies and souls. When they finally collapsed, spent and breathless, the sun was significantly higher in the sky. A lazy, sated silence fell over them. Sloane traced idle patterns on Ava's damp skin. "We're going to be late for work," Ava murmured, her voice drowsy and completely unconcerned. Sloane nuzzled her neck. "Colin, Ava turned her head to look at her, a playful grin spreading across her face. You, the queen of punctuality, advocating for playing hooky. Sloane kissed her shoulder. There are more important things than being on time. Ava's grin widened. She reached for her phone on the nightstand, never disentangling herself from Sloane. She called her gallery, putting on a convincingly rough voice. Hi, Elaine. It's Ava. I'm not feeling well at all today. I think I need to rest. She winked at Sloane, who rolled her eyes affectionately. She ended the call and held the phone out to Sloane. Your turn, grumpy knight. Lie for me. Sloane took the phone with a sigh, but her eyes were sparkling. She dialed her office. Nora. Sloane. Archer. I won't be in today. Personal matter. She paused, listening. Yes, everything is fine. Thank you. She ended the call and dropped the phone back on the nightstand, satisfied. Sunshine menaced immensely. Ava purred, stretching like a cat. I feel a sudden need to get very clean. She slipped out of bed, pulling a giggling Sloane with her into the spacious bathroom. Steam soon fogged the mirrors as the shower heated up. They stepped under the hot spray, soaping each other's bodies with slow, sensual hands, rediscovering each other in the new light. Then Ava reached for the handheld showerhead. She adjusted the dial, and the spray narrowed into a firm, pressurized jet. A mischievous glint lit her eyes. Turn around, she whispered. Sloane, intrigued, complied, bracing her hands against the cool tile wall. She expected the water on her back. She gasped as Ava directed the powerful pinpoint stream of hot water directly between her legs from behind. The sensation was intense, unexpected, a relentless pressure on her most sensitive spot. Her knees buckled. Ava, she moaned, her head dropping forward. Ava held her steady with one hand on her hip, her other expertly maneuvering the showerhead, circling, teasing, holding the pulsating spray right where she knew Sloane needed it. She watched the powerful muscles in Sloane's back tense and quiver, heard her breath become ragged, pleading moans. That's it, Ava murmured, her lips against Sloane's wet shoulder blade. Let go for me. The combination of the water's insistent pressure and Ava's voice in her ear was too much. Sloane cried out, her body convulsing as a second, shocking orgasm ripped through her, leaving her shaking and supported only by Ava's strong embrace and the tile wall. Ava turned off the water and wrapped her arms fully around Sloane, holding her as she came down, pressing soft kisses to her back. Later, wrapped in fluffy robes and sharing a pot of coffee on the sun-drenched sofa, their legs entwined, they looked at each other. No day at any job could ever compare to this. To the quiet, profound happiness of simply being together. To the thrilling discovery that even after all this time, they could still find new ways to awe and overwhelm each other. Sloane looked at Ava, her smile, her sparkling eyes, the love that radiated from her. And she knew this was her forever. It wasn't a grand gesture on a stage or dramatic declaration. It was this, a stolen weekday morning, a shared silence, a lifetime of mornings just like this one waiting for them. She leaned over and kissed her, a slow, deep, promising kiss. Thank you, Sloane whispered, her forehead resting against Ava's. For what? Ava whispered back, her eyes closed, savoring the moment. For making me late.